What up? Back at you. Kind of touch back on what I was talking about a little bit yesterday. With what is the next big thing? There was something I left off the list, particularly because it's a long subject, and that would be climate emergency. We have, and it's just, as soon as I'm, when you get suspended from Twitter, after about a week or so, if you keep going on Twitter on your suspended account and try to reload tweets, you'll see new tweets, and at first it'll be tweets from people that you followed, but then all of a sudden you'll get this curated kiosk of tweets, and if you just kind of get a quick read of what those tweets are, you can kind of see what the psyop they're trying to develop, in the early stages. And right now, it's climate emergency, and if you go in the comment section, it's just like back in the day when they told you that you had to turn the lights off and shut the refrigerator door quick and all this stuff to make the consumer responsible for the for the egregious polluters and people that want to make you pay for electricity by the kilowatt hour instead of Tesla or whatever. This whole world is just designed to enslave people from the beginning, but somehow, everybody seems to fall in line with all kinds of these, things that the government wants to do, which, if you talk to somebody, generally they're, kind of agreeable on that the government's always lying about stuff, that the corporations are really the ones responsible for these big issue problems, but, it's always the people that gotta do the heavy lifting somehow. That we get the burden for all the things that they do. They get nothing but the returns are always good for them, and they don't really share that with you too much. But then, when something goes wrong for them, they're gonna be the ones to get a bailout or get a slap on the wrist, or get a fine that's not even a slap on the wrist. So people understand all this, but somehow they're still caught up in this illusion that somehow, if you don't drive your car as much, or if you, I don't know, stop eating meat, if everybody would just stop flying in the airplanes and all this other stuff, then, and that's us. They're not talking about the private jets that Al Gore's flying around in, or Bill Gates. They're just talking about you wanting to go to Miami for a weekend getaway. That's just going to destroy the climate, buddy. You better find a different way or just stay home. It's all about what you can do, and basically what that is that's to shame you later on. But this video isn't even about that. This video is about cognitive dissonance, and it's kind of what I'm talking about. Like these people that claim they don't watch TV news, they claim they don't watch cable news, they're above the fray, but somehow they're still falling in line with everything that the government and the mainstream media is pushing on them to do. Kind of weird. We've seen proof positive of this during COVID. And the fact that the people that were yelling at you for the first year of COVID to trust the science, all of a sudden they don't give a shit about the science anymore. When you show them the excess mortality science or the science behind the spike protein being an absolute bioweapon, you don't get anything there. You just get people talking about how COVID is worse than the jab or whatever, because the cognitive dissonance is it's so deep with people. And one of the ways that this has become a thing is because of hyper-partisanship and this whole two-party illusion, two-party system, whatever you want to call it, where the government pretends like they're two different factions to get the people to try to vote for them based on, it's all basically projected virtue signals. Because the government, no matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat, they're not doing what the people that would vote for them want them to do. They never did. They haven't in a long time. It's been proven that the people don't get 70% or more of things that they would like to get out of the government in terms of things that you vote for. The public's will, the will of the people, is not being realized through these corrupted government entities, which has all become agencies. And each agency, whether it's the CIA or the DEA or the CDC, they're always looking to increase their budgets. They're always, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, look at the military-industrial complex. Somehow after we were out of the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, after that, the military budget just keeps increasing and keeps becoming a record budget every year. For what? We don't even have boots on the ground, apparently. The cognitive dissonance is a big mystery to me, because every time somebody that I feel like is a victim of it, I try to talk to them about whatever issue it is, and they pretend like they're not just listening to some, debunker or whatever, and the talking points they're giving me is the exact talking points that the factcheck.org or whatever other fake Snopes fact checkers, arbitrators of facts, want to tell you. And that's the talking points they're going to give you. And you're like, I thought you didn't watch TV news. I thought you wasn't into mainstream media. I thought you were above the fray. No, they're not above the fray. Somehow, either they're watching the TV, or it doesn't matter. They have to answer to their own social network of people who are all on board with the thing. So there's no really resistance from them. And eventually they become saturated so much with those talking points that they basically believe it themselves. One of the biggest examples I've seen throughout my life with cognitive dissonance is this whole idea of chemtrails. Now, I don't even like to call them chemtrails anymore, unless I just want to piss somebody off that acts like they're not real. But now, before I get into this very touchy subject of geoengineering, chemtrails, strategic aerosol injection. There's many names that they've given it over the years, because, quite frankly, I don't know if they're actually doing it or not. I look up in the sky and I see these things all the time. There's one right now. There's a giant X over there, and there's several lines. I don't know if I could really get that with my front camera, so I'm not even going to try it, but those are not normal. And the normal thing is a contrail, which is a little tiny thing behind an airplane. It disappears quite rapidly. And a lot of people are saying that that's water vapors that we're seeing, those big lines in the sky and them grids. Well, that's still a problem, because if you go Google water vapors as a greenhouse gas, it's one of the biggest ones, it's one of the worst ones, and when underwater volcanoes happen, it heats the earth up and causes global warming rapidly and more efficiently than any other greenhouse gas. There's nothing that even comes close to it. So that's a problem if those are water vapors. If they're not water vapors, then what are they? Chemicals? We know through different... we know there's so much evidence that this shit's real that it's not even funny. I could go through it all if I wanted, but I don't really feel like wasting this whole video on it. But just a real quick overview of what I know is in the 90s in the UK, people really got mad about this stuff, started doing soil and air samples, and they found things that were in this stuff. And, to this day, none of the ingredients that they found have been contested by anybody. And when you look at the stratospheric aerosol injection people, that's an actual scientific body of people that have been getting government funding and getting increased budgets every year since the 90s, and that's what they're studying. And you can watch videos of them talking about what geoengineering is and how it's supposed to, do their desired effects, which I think what they're trying to say is if they mimic a volcano, you know, a really big volcano goes off and it shoots all this, you know, smoke and gases into the air. Well, there's been times when that has cooled the earth because of blocking out the sun. And the problem with that is it's not really some controlled thing where you know where exactly you're gonna get the worst results, but it had caused famine and massive amounts of death. Millions of people died when that happened. And it's not something you recover from very quickly either. It takes a couple years for that to dissipate and things to start to get back to normal. So geoengineering, it is real. You had the CIA guy Brennan was selling this whole idea to Congress back when he was the CIA guy. And the funny thing is when that happened, I was like, oh, here, proof positive. The CIA guy is on TV selling geoengineering and stratospheric aerosol injection, whatever he called it. I don't remember the exact terminology he used at the time. But I was like, here it is. If you don't believe in chemtrails, just watch this guy sell the shit for $10 billion to the U.S. government. Now, I don't know if the government bought that when he was selling it, but just recently, now before I go into that, when that happened, I was like, boom, proof. And I did that on Facebook. Big mistake there. Probably lost some friends over it because the cognitive dissonance is so bad that if you say chemtrails, automatically now you're QAnon, now you're a Trumper, now you're a Nazi, now you're a racist, and all this stupid shit. Because that's what the divide and conquer regime has set up for you. Anytime the truth comes out about something, you're crazy. And you can show evidence after evidence after evidence. No one looks at it. They don't care about watching a video clip of some CIA guy on TV selling geoengineering. They just want to immediately screech and run out of the room as soon as they see one of the people they thought were their friends talking about something that the QAnon people talk about. And it's weird because people were talking about chemtrails way before QAnon was even a thing. So, and now it's another boost for the, you know, hey, you should believe this stuff is real, is Brennan just did sell the chemtrails to Joe Biden. He under the guise of cloud seeding, which is not exactly what cloud seeding is. A whole different thing. I mean, you can use chemtrails probably to seed clouds. I've seen it done in a lab, and that's probably, you know, but I've mentioned this before in a video too that I've talked about chemtrails, is they'll never use it to seed clouds to give you rain where there was a drought, or they'll never try to reverse and over, you know, like an area that gets too many monsoons. They won't try to reverse that. They won't try to push that away from certain crops and stuff in areas where people die every year because they can't grow crops. They won't do the stuff like that for good. It's a depopulation agenda. Brennan sold that shit. Biden bought it. It's on the news. You can go watch it. You can look at it. You can see what they're talking about. But yet people will still, if I called this video chemtrails, I'd probably lose some friends and people would unsubscribe, or I don't know about YouTube. I think people that are still here probably have a lot of like-minded thoughts like I do about these topics. But the cognitive dissonance is really what I'm talking about when it comes to the chemtrail talk. And it's just, it's hard to deal with because you really just want to unite with the people that are in your immediate area. You know, like I can talk to my family about these kind of topics. Well, you know, because most of them are on board. They've looked at the research and they've listened to people talking about certain topics. And you have to, that's what you have to do. You can't just go through life droning along and then when something happens, you're like, oh no, I need to pay attention to this because it sounds important. And then the first thing you do is you go look at some New York Times articles or turn on CNN or something. That's what the problem is right there. And I'm not trying to convince everybody to become some boring idiot that just pays attention to weird, crazy shit going on in the world all the time. And it makes you look a little crazy when you do that. But what I am trying to do is I'm trying to figure out how to penetrate this cognitive dissonance bubble that so many people have. And they might even reverse that onto me and say, oh, you know what, maybe you have cognitive dissonance. Maybe you don't want to look at the evidence. Well, that's not, you can't take that position if you don't do that, you know. That's what the position they take all the time is, though. Remember during COVID, you weren't supposed to research things and look into things on your own, because if you did, you were, you know, the nameless, they call you. So you had to keep your mouth shut if you knew things on certain social media environments, because you didn't want to lose your friends on Instagram just because you really wanted to raise some alarm bells about certain things that they were trying to make people do during the pandemic, especially the lockdowns. The lockdowns economically destroyed so much wealth in this country as far as small business ownership and mental health and just so many things that the lockdowns were just horrible for. In fact, nobody recommended lockdowns until they were pushed by the, you know, Walensky, Fauci regime. And once they started pushing it, the people that, like, there was people in the WHO that were against lockdowns before they were initiated, and those voices got shut right up. So the cognitive dissonance was revealed in such a big way then, and when people were sitting here just before COVID talking about how they were above the fray and they don't watch cable news, and maybe that was true because the ratings were really going to shit for all the cable channels, you know, once you didn't have Donald Trump around to, well, you know, once they stopped talking about him, really their ratings just went right down the drain. So now the cognitive dissonance is basically engulfing people once again. They're already rolling this central bank digital currency shit out. They're going to try to do it in Australia, and that's going to be a fun thing to watch. But there's so many different things that I wish people were more attuned to, because this cognitive dissonance is going to get us into some real dark places in the future if people are not willing to do their own research, look into shit. And these topics, I'm afraid they're not going to require people are not going to feel like they need to. For example, climate change. You already have most people that are on board with this climate change agenda thing, you know, people that want you to be afraid of the impending doom of the humans causing the planet to no longer be habitable for humans. Well, you know, I can't do anything about it. You know, I'm not going to stop driving my car. I'm not going to stop eating meat. I'm not going to stop. Well, I haven't flown since the TSA has been there, but maybe someday again. I definitely would like to fly again. But we really don't. We're really not gonna solve the climate problem by going to like a carbon system where you count the carbon. Every individual person will be carbon metered, and this will be applied to your social credit score. I mean, I'm just speculating, but it's real easy to do, ain't it? Like how easily that they can completely enslave us just because we have digital currency that they control. That's very important. But the climate thing is where they can really utilize this. And it's just like when you look on those tweets where they're like, oh, everybody could stop eating meat and everybody could do this and everybody could do that. Those are things that they might consider initiating into this credit score system. Like, oh, you drive a car, well, every time you drive a certain amount of miles, you're losing social credit score points. And This is going to affect your bottom line. And, oh, you made a video about that, B? You're in trouble. All right, that's all I got on this for now. I'm sure I'll talk more about cognitive dissonance in future videos, especially when the topics are really coming in looking like there's going to be a lot of it out there. And I don't fall in line with anybody. Like, you know, you get these people that are just like, oh, just because they said it on the news, it's got to be fake. I kind of believe that, but I'm also not stupid. I know that the news is propagandized versions of reality, and that there is some nugget of truth in almost all news stories, unless it's just complete fluff pieces invented to propagandize something. But be careful, be vigilant when it comes to information. That's important. And I don't know how to break through to these people. If someone's got any ideas on that, let me know. All right, peace.